Did you know? Yeah, this is my new super expensive acquisition, which I have totally fallen in love with. The new 70-200 2.8 VR E, they call it the VR3 Nikon, only $2,800. You know, there are some lenses that Nikon almost can't screw up. They are the bread and butter lenses of Nikon. If Nikon screwed up the bread and butter lenses, people would go, oh shit, Nikon is doomed. If they screwed this lens up, Nikon would be so screwed. That's also the reason why I'm 200% certain that Nikon is coming out with a new version of the 300mm 2.8 next year to go along with the D500 and the updated full-frame version, which would be like the D780 or... By the way, Nikon is going to kill off the D750 next year. Nikon is so happy to get rid of the D750. It could survive much into next year, but it's gone. It's not going to be around. No, they're going to replace that. They shouldn't even still be making the Nikon D610. They should halt production on it. But some lenses that Nikon can't screw up are the bread and butter of professional photography. 85mm, you think it'd be 1.4, no. 85mm 1.8G Nikon. Yep. The 105mm macro Nikon. The Trinity lenses, or the so to say Trinity lenses. This being number one. Right now, Nikon owns everybody's ass on the 70-200. They've beaten the hell out of Canon. The Sony is way, way, way worse. Not by my opinion, by MTF charts and specific lowdown from lens rentals as far as testing that lens. Not only testing that lens, but testing many, many copies of that lens. So that lens is a total turd muffin. Yeah, I said turd muffin. So those are, and like the 50mm 1.8G, not a favorite lens of mine at all, but perfectly fine. 24mm f1.8G, a new lens relatively speaking, which is awesome. The 20mm 1.8G, Nikon also owns everybody's ass. They own Voigtlander, they own Zeiss. Ultrawide lenses below 28mm absolutely suck. Nikon owns everybody's ass on the ultrawides, except for Fuji on one lens only. That's the 16mm f1.4. Fuji definitely owns it on that mark, but it's not a fisheye, it's just a 16mm field of view. The Nikkor 16mm is a fisheye, for example. However, Nikon owns it on fisheyes as well. Nikon is the owner of fisheyes. That's also a working lens. Most people don't think that's a working lens, but actually the fisheye lens, it's really hard to improve on Nikon's 16. That lens is not getting updated anytime soon. It's just not. There is not much to improve upon when it comes to that lens. That lens is very expensive, by the way. I own it. It's $1,000. It's probably going to go up again next year. The Trinity lens is like 14-24, the 24-70. However, the new 24-70 2.8 with VR is a little screwed up. The image is worse. The lens has way too many elements in it. They over-engineered it, and it's now huger and heavier with more elements in it. That's not to say the autofocus isn't fast and the VR isn't welcome, but there's no way I would buy it. That lens's update was almost a downgrade from the prior version, so Nikon messed up a little bit on that one. This is one they definitely didn't mess up on. This is far more of a higher priority lens to them than even the working wedding. Well, they're both about pretty equal, actually, but more people are actually using this, not just for weddings and portraiture, but sports action and wildlife. However, it's a little short for wildlife, of course, but Nikon really kicked it out of the park with this nice and expensive lens. I mean, they really... I was not expecting this. I knew it would be higher resolution, much faster autofocus, but Nikon just crucified it with this lens. This lens is absolutely the cat's ass. Unfreaking believable. So those are the lenses that Nikon can't screw up on. They have some boutique, some frou-frou lenses that they put thought into, and they brought it to production only to give themselves padding and have something else to sell. Many times the case, the astronomical price tag. Nikon does have, by the way, a few loss leader lenses, like the 200mm to 500. Currently that lens is $1,300. If that lens, it's so awesome. I got two of them, which is really stupid. If that lens were $1,800, $500 more, Nikon would still sell the bejesus out of that lens. $500 higher, they would still sell the crap out of it. That lens is not a loss leader. I mean, they're certainly making money off of it, but relative to many of their other lenses, especially their boutique lenses, astronomical profit margin on the 200 millimeter, astronomical profit margin on the 300 millimeter f4 phase Fresnel. Not much profit margin on the 200 to 500. Every company has to do that. There's a few lenses that they have to throw their customers a bone on, and I don't just mean like cheap, crappy Chinese plastic lenses. However, that lens is Chinese, and it's plastic casing, but so is a 300 millimeter phase Fresnel. But that lens is $800 overpriced. Nikon would actually sell the hell out of those lenses. I know they had an issue when they first rolled them out. If that lens were what it should be priced, $1,200 or $1,300 max, there's no way in hell Nikon should have ever priced that damn lens more than $1,300. Big stupid mistake. Big dumbass mistake right there. So that's it. Some of their wide primes, some of their working primes, like the 50mm 1.8G, the 85mm 1.8G. The 105 is not a working lens. Thankfully, they have not yet discontinued. However, the mark discontinued in some parts of Europe. The 105 f2 DC Nikkor. That lens is their best portrait lens, period. It's actually the best portrait lens I've ever used in my life, and God knows I own most every decent portrait lens in the world. Not by Canon, but certainly so by Zeiss, and certainly so by Nikon and Voigtlander. The Voigtlander 58 is actually a perfect portrait lens on DX with a equivalent 85mm field of view. That lens is unbelievable. I've actually never had somebody buy so many lenses off me, except maybe the Nikon 100mm off my recommendation. I'm just so happy. I mean, two lenses that have got the most attention and the most purchases have been the Voigtlander 58mm and the Nikon 100mm 2.8 macro / portrait lens. The only thing that lens has as far as a deficiency is a slightly noisy autofocus system, but build quality is absolutely exquisite. So those are the things that Nikon really couldn't have screwed up on, because if they did, then Nikon would have been written off as, bound for doomsday, shall we say. However, they kind of said that about the Nikon D5. The Nikon D5, really what Nikon did is they didn't... even though the Nikon D5 is, a failure, value-wise, for example, what they did is they gave the Nikon D500 too much, and then they gave the Nikon D500 too little. The Nikon D500 is absolutely insane value. It's every bit of the Nikon D5. Well, it's not a full frame, Yeah, I know it isn't. So damn what? It doesn't also cost, 3.5 times as much. Relative to the Nikon D5. The D5 has miserable low ISO dynamic range. It has an optical low-pass filter. That camera is pretty stinky. However, just give Nikon about another year and a half, and they'll roll out the improved Nikon D5S with improved dynamic range, improved touchscreen, improved video capability. Hey, at least it's not a Canon. You know what Canon did this year? I mean, they screwed the pooch. Canon screwed the pooch. They did. There's no denying that Canon screwed up for the year 2016. It's unlikely they're going to do anything next year either. I think Canon is a little bit doomed. So, that's it. The only thing that Nikon really screwed up on their primary working lenses is the new 2470 2.8 with the VR, but it's not that bad of a screw-up. I mean, they did make the thing a little too damn heavy with a little too damn many elements, and it is the resolving power of that lens is not even as good as its prior non-VR version, which I'm glad they did bring it out, because there's a crap load of non-VR version 2470 2.8s, and those are great. And so, hey, bring out the new one. That just means the really awesome one will get cheap. Or cheaper, shall we say. Especially used. Grab a used one for like $900 now, in excellent condition. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can drop a buck or two. Tell me to jump off a cliff. Whatever makes you happy. Thank you. And happy holidays. Bye.